Hey guys, we're going to be in Jeremiah 49 and 50 today. And so we're going to jump into 49 here, where the first thing that stuck out to me was verse 11 when it says, "Leave your fatherless children, I will keep alive, and let your widows trust in me." I love just God's heart and passion for orphans and widows. And I love how, like, even in judgment, under judgment, like this nation's under judgment, God's mercy still reaches the most vulnerable. Like, he just bubbles them. It's so beautiful. I love it so much. And our hearts should be the same for widows and orphans, guys. Okay, and then verse 12, the other thing was that it talks about that cup of wrath. And so remember back in chapter 25, God was telling Jeremiah that to take this cup of wrath, to take this cup, go to all these nations and have them drink it. It was like accepting this wrath. And it's talking about here now how no one will escape it. And he said it then too, but he's reiterating it. So like bringing us back, like tying it in, like using it as a thread of like, this cup, give that to him, and what you think if you don't drink it, that wrath is not coming, that judgment won't come. Yeah, that's not true. Like, it's definitely coming. You are definitely going to be judged. Everyone has a judgment time, and here is theirs. No one is exempt from that. And then in chapter 50, Babylon brings judgment on all those nations. Remember, Babylon was who's God's using right now over the last few chapters to judge the nations, to bring about his wrath. But now Babylon is going to get judged. And actually 50 and 51 are all Babylon's judgments. So I'm not really sure why they broke it into 2 days, but they did. Other than 51 is very long. So maybe it's on its own. I'm not sure. We'll see tomorrow. But now the prophecy is coming through to what will happen to Babylon. So after all of this, their judgment, then they're going to be judged. And then in verse 8, when people are led astray, it talks about a male goat. It says, I'll just read it to you. Actually, I'm going to start at verse 6 here because it kind of has a bit of it. It's talking about, my people have been lost sheep and their shepherd led them astray. All who found them devoured them. And then it goes into verse 8, which is this: flee from the midst of Babylon and go out to the land of the Chaldeans and be as male goats before the flock. That kind of stood out to me because he was talking about this lost sheep and these shepherds who led them astray. And then he's calling people into being male goats among the flock, that they should serve as leaders at the head of a flock. And so like I was looking it up, and a he-goat went first. Like that's kind of what their nature was. They went first. They set the path out for others. They represent strong leaders because they didn't like wait passively. They would lead the charge. And so when others are led astray, don't blindly follow. Instead, separate and create a new path, pulling people back on track. Be the he-goat is what he's talking about here, which is super encouraging for us, and we can take to heart, right? Okay, so the rest of 50, I have like 4 phrases that I just kept noticing throughout all the judgment that I wanted to address, that like for some reason they were sticking out, and I'm like, man, we keep seeing this phrase throughout Jeremiah. What does this mean? And I like deep dove kind of what it meant. So that's what the last bit of this is. I have 4 phrases here. And so the first one is this word hissing, that people will do as they pass by. We keep seeing that throughout Jeremiah, right? Like in the judgment, he's like, when people pass by, they'll hiss. Or when people see you, they'll hiss. When people see your grave, they'll hiss. And so you keep seeing this word hiss, this hissing happening. And so I was looking up what that was meaning. And the Hebrew word for it is saraq, meaning whistle. And what he's meaning here is that when, and in all this phrases, when he says this phrase, he's meaning that when he uses it, is that these cities that were used to produce fear in man, that men used to walk by it or walk by a person and it created fear, then instead there'd be like this mocking tisk, like mocking of like, wow, you thought you were so great and look at what God did to you. So not only that, but that was also a billboard almost for God's power. Like, look at this great thing that God has destroyed, because nothing can stand against him. So it's kind of this mockery. And bottom line, sin leads to disgrace, judgment is inevitable, and no power stands against God is kind of my ultimate understanding of it now. And then in verse 28, it said a voice, exclamation mark. And we see this often as well. A voice, like even in that one verse that I told you guys was my verse a few years ago, that's a voice crying out in the wilderness. But it's like a voice, exclamation, like it's its own sentence. And we're seeing it again here in verse 28. And so I'm like, what is the significance of that when it's just on it, like it's its own sentence and it's this call? And what I found, it says, every so often we see this phrase, right? In Hebrew, it's quo, meaning sound. It means to like listen and to hear what's being said, like hear it as a sudden sound, as not just like words on a paper, but when you're reading it, hear it, like almost like weeping or shouting, how it's noise. The author here, so Jeremiah here, the prophet, he's trying to say like this, hear this as in a sound, as in weeping or shouting. It's not, don't just read it, but hear it. These words as a sound, as in like real time, and calling others. He's calling others to pay attention to this, almost like a headline, like breaking news, like hear this. And I thought that was interesting, because then when you read that, you're like, okay, I want to pay attention. And I almost wish I looked this up a while ago, so that way all those other times I read it, I would understand it as what its meaning here. The other one was in 32. So my third one was in 32. This kindle fire, or he said sets cities will burn, or sets ablaze, or sets on fire. Like we keep seeing this fire happening in God's judgment. And this phrase keeps saying, we see it throughout all God's judgment. And fire is God's divine judgment, representing the unstoppable nature of God's judgment, this purification. It's total destruction and marks the end of everything, exposing all the false securities. So that's why we keep seeing it. It's not just a judgment slap on the wrist. It's an all-consuming fire. Like the city will be set ablaze. Like the in ancient times, when an army would come in and invade and set it on fire, it was like not just looting it and taking their prisoners, but an end to it for newness to come, which is super cool, because we see that coming in this next one too here, which is a phrase of as a woman in labor, verse 43. And so here's my last one that stuck out. I'm like, man, constant labor or birthing, like it keeps talking about that. Another phrase we keep seeing in judgment. So childbirth is inevitable. It's intensifying, uncomfortable. Judgment is sudden, grows in intensity, cannot be stopped until it runs its course, but it's all purposeful. Just like labor is purposeful, it's not for no reason. Same with judgment, that it's not for nothing. God's not just like doing it because he gets a kick out of it. There is a purposefulness in it. And so for Judah, it looked like exile to restoration. And for nation, it looks like collapse of pride and revelation of God's sovereignty. So a hope is hidden inside this pain. The painful process leads to renewal, just like the process of new life being born. So that is why we keep seeing that. So like I said, the phrases that were sticking out, this hissing, this a voice, this fire, this consuming fire and kindling a fire and set ablaze, and then this woman in labor. That's kind of what was my mind share this morning. And so I wanted to share that with you guys. And I hope you enjoy your reading, get into it yourself. And I hope this adds meat to when you're reading it, that you can see these spots and then moving forward, see these spots, and they just kind of trigger your brain to seeing these understandings that I found. All right, we'll see you guys later.